Hello and fuck Cape shit.
Shit.
Welcome to another episode of Shittywebcomics Weekly. Brought to you by our Subscribe Star backers. Check out the link below to get access to the big deep dive extra bonus videos of bonuses. This week, I wanted to just touch on Berserk and sort of not exactly its ending point necessarily. Not going to spoil it. But there were a few things, like I saved a couple of these pages here, that were making me think just about where the story was kind of trying to present itself as going, that would clearly have to go on for like some number of years to really escalate properly. It couldn't just be like, and then Guts shows up and cuts his head off or something. But
Yeah, because there it was clearly leading to a bunch of stuff.
yeah, a big variety of crazy shit. But the one of the more interesting things I always thought about where the ending was going was that Griffistu was being presented as as like the most holy, pure, godlike, wonderful, Jesus-like, sinless, greatest person. He's surrounded by people who see him as a beacon of hope and wonderful niceness. And I always thought that was a really fascinating kind of plot development. Is that then Guts would have to be going up against these people who all seem like good people, and they look at Griffith like, wow, he's a great person. It's a soothing sight, no matter how many times I see it, of Griffith being like, oh, here, let's return to the city where your loved ones await. Wow, what a great, considerate person. And it really speaks to the concept of a of the presentation of the idea of a moral good person with the goodness coding. He's all in white and pale and has like feathery stuff and angelic, and he wants wings. And so people see the presentation and believe it. They can't, they, if they were told otherwise, they would not be able to believe that anything is wrong with Griffith, that he did anything wrong. They would clearly say Griffith did nothing wrong. And that's the thing. It's about the perception. It's about people's perception of an evil person being good. And it really speaks to what we've been pointing out about the human race, is that everyone will look at an immoral person and decide that they're moral just because they want to, because they don't want to see the truth. This is more insidious, though, in a way, because Griffith took all these people and didn't even, they don't even have a chance to see an evil version of him because they don't know anything about him. It's completely new. Whereas in real life, most people will see the evil of a person, an objectively, ontologically evil, immoral person do objectively immoral activities and behaviors, and they will ignore them and say, no, he's based and red pilled and trad and chad and all that stuff. It's what happened with Jack Murphy. It's what happened with all these other leech tubers. Jack Murphy is just one person. Everyone who's like, oh, Jack Murphy's such a cuck, you like somebody who is just the next Jack Murphy and you don't know it yet.
Yeah, just different levels of fame,
Yeah.
different levels of existing fame already.
And a lot of people who are trashing Jack Murphy, a lot of YouTubers who are like, Jack Murphy, he's such a cuck. They are themselves Jack Murphy, and they're hoping that nobody finds out about it or realizes it, while the proof of it is right out in the open, and people don't want to see it. In a way, Griffith is in a better situation because he just picked a bunch of people who have no idea what his past ever was, and he presents himself, even though there's not exactly clues for them to clue in on, aside from the fact that he does lead an army of demons. But he's leading an army of demons against like other demons and the Kushan Empire that has other demons and stuff. And so it represents that it's like you pick a bad enemy and say, look how terrible that enemy is. We'll defeat them. And it's like a legitimate rapist mass murderer could be leading the charge against those evil demons. And you'll just go, oh, that guy's so good. And it's like, he's a rapist mass murderer. And it's like, no, he's not. You're just jealous. That's always the fucking defense.
He donated to charity.
Yeah, fuck yeah, and that actually, there's actually a plot element later where he goes to the council of the city and shit, and he's like, "We need to increase charity." Like Griffith actually says, "We need to increase charity for all the children and the orphans and stuff." And like, wow, what a great selfless, noble person, and all that shit. And that's the thing is that people just don't. In real life, the real life equivalent is that people don't want to see, but with and that's the thing also is that Guts, I'm sure, is just jealous of Griffith. That's what everyone would assume is that Guts, he's just jealous of Griffithsu and his beautiful flowing hair and his fucking.
And Guts is dressed in all black and stuff.
Yeah, he's evil coded. That's the thing. Unironically, Guts is the presentation of what you're supposed to see as evil. But we know that Guts is the good guy because we see his actions. See, that's the thing. It's about the context, and most people ignore the context. So even a lot of people who like Berserk miss the point of Berserk. They don't understand that it's about context and how you yourself, even the reader of the comic, will see an evil person as good and a good person as evil because you are clueless or because you want to believe what you want to believe. It's about believing rather than knowing, and it's
listening
kind of,
and believing. Very listening and believing. The whole concept of belief itself is a very stupid concept.
The most overrated virtue, as Christopher Hitchens said, is faith, and that's what this is about. Griffith is basically he leads through faith and belief, and everyone is amazed by his actions and all that shit. And of course, he does a bunch of literally magical things. And the art really is fantastic, but it's a shame that it kind of will never conclude this. But one thing I do have to say that I'm satisfied with Berserk about is that it at least did tell that story. Maybe we never see Griffith defeated, but we do know he's the bad guy, and we know that people see him as the good guy. How exactly can that conclude without several years more, or fucking Guts has to go killing a ton of innocent people who themselves are probably moral, but they are just following an immoral person?
There's also Skull Knight and the fucking, what was it, Zod the Immortal?
Mm-hmm. And they're weird factors, too, because one of them's all... Like, Zod the Immortal doesn't even necessarily seem evil. He just seems controlled. He's kept like a pet. But also, he knows that he's not going to ever be as powerful as Griffithsu. So, it's Japanese for Griffith. But that's that's the place he kind of wants to be in, is he wants to be at... If he can't beat him, if you can't beat him, join him. And that's the situation that he will always be in now. And whereas the Skull Knight legitimately, actually, the end of Berserk does very well establish who the Skull Knight was and his past and all that shit. And that was good. And there was an interesting, where the final chapter actually ends is on a very interesting kind of plot twist that isn't conclusive necessarily, but it reveals something. And I do recommend, like, if you haven't caught up with Berserk, you might as well. I would like it if they tried to continue it, if they found like some kind of general plot guide, synopsis, notes, whatever, and just have some other group continuing it the way that they think it would go. I don't know.
It seems like it's something that if it was up to me, I would be putting a lot of care into.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it can be tricky. It's like, how do you know the person being chosen is actually the right person for the job, as opposed to, because it ties in with this. It's like, you could fucking hire somebody who's just a complete fucking narcissist who's like, now I'm gonna make Berserk the way I always wanted it to be, and it's like you don't want that. But who? How do you stop that necessarily? How do you look into somebody's soul? Well, it's not like you could put the fucking liar patch on them like in Rise of the Shield Hero, where they get fucking zapped right in the tits. The fucking jack to the tits every time they lie. You can't exactly do that. Um, but yeah, that's I think just the interesting aspect of some of the ending of Berserk, and the sort of not just the final arc that exists, but the arc that was going through, and clearly would have had to have some kind of very morally messy conclusion of the evil coded people defeating the good coded people. Is that really what people would have wanted to see? And is that do people understand that that's what they're seeing? Is that Guts is essentially the evil guy because he's all in black and he's sinister and all scarred up and he's traumatized and has childhood trauma and all that shit. But again, it's the context that reveals the truth of the situation. So yeah, I guess not really a shitty web comic this week, but again, this is for talking about there's really weekly episodes just talking about
I
them.
guess you could definitely say that in comparison to this, everything else is a shitty webcomic.
Yes, certainly. Even if it's in print, most fucking comics that go to print are quite shitty. Even in compare, but it's not just that the art's great or the storytelling is great, but look at that the way that the story was willing to make some uncomfortable inferences and statements. There's entire chapters about what a great person Griffith is now and his new Band of the Hawk and how people just love him and see him as the paragon of all that is good and holy and moral. And the exact opposite is true, but all of these people can't accept that there is not even a clue for these people to catch on to or question. So it's very uncomfortable, and that was one of the things I liked about Berserk was not just the big tit decapitation, rapes, and horrors, but just those uncomfortable moral situations. Um, so yeah, that's it for now.
It goes to show that you can actually do that. You can respect your audience.
Yes. This is what respecting your audience really looks like, though. Sometimes people are going to be, and sometimes people are just not going to understand it. I know there's a lot of people who like Berserk who really clearly don't get that, or they're like this in real life. They're like the Band of the Hawk, where they're worshiping someone who is ontologically evil. Anyways, so we'll wrap up with that. Unlike, share, recomment, unsubscribe, or whatever. But you could check out all of our big extra videos. The real content now is on our Subscribe Star linked below. And should have listened to Shitty Webcomics.